Hey everyone, welcome back to the Watchlist Podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Boyer. Today I'm joined by friend and fellow Kutztown alumni, Cody Myers. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. Thanks for having me.
Of course. I've been meaning to have you on for a while because we kind of talked about potentially collaborating on something towards the end of senior year, but it never came through. Time
sometimes gets away from you. I was thinking about that and like, I should, get around to actually writing that. Not that, scheduling is any easier in the real world, but
exactly, yeah.
I've definitely wanted to.
It was that
make something.
We the Happy Few adaptation, right?
Yeah, and now it's finally out, and I want to play it, but time. So
exactly, yeah. My whole schedule is just is pretty much editing all day with PBS, and then come home and work on this if I have an episode that I need to get out, and then if I have any other free time, I just put it into Counter-Strike. That's usually my go-to.
Nice.
What's
nice.
your
so PBS has been good for you?
Yeah, it's been nice. I mean, it's not 100% what I want to do, but I mean, like it pays the bills, and it's better than working in fast food or retail. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I totally understand.
So what have you been up to since graduating?
A whole lot. So during my internship, because I had a more reading and writing centered one, because it was kind of like you get scripts and then you write those what are those called? Synopsises and
like treatments?
Not treatment. Yeah, they were like treatments, but it was like we were taking notes on them and stuff, and just kind of like being like, is this something worth pursuing, kind of thing.
Okay.
So I read a ton of scripts, and I was like kind of burnt out from reading and writing and everything. So I kind of was like, I need to shift gears here. So I started working part-time as a promo assistant at a radio station.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So
you want to give a quick plug to the station, or you'd rather not say?
Sure. It's Red 102.3. It's a locally owned country station. So not the kind of music I normally listen to, but the people super amazing. It's a small staff. There's probably like 7 people.
Right.
Yeah. So
and they got both kinds of music, country and western.
Exactly. But yeah, with that, I'll bring my camera to events. I just have a cheap DSLR,
right?
And I'll bring that to events, kind of get stuff to make a highlight meld, and then make a video about the event. So I'll do that for bigger stuff like the Easter egg hunt, assuming that is not canceled or moved for whatever reason. That'll be taking place the Saturday, so the day before Easter, and then so I'll like make a highlight video for that. But I've been doing that since I'd say March. It's been about a year that I've been doing that. It's just part-time, so that's part of the struggle. I've also been freelancing for the Pennsylvania Cable Network, so that's been interesting because I got hired as like a field video person, so like going to like sporting events, like the PIAA had the swimming and diving, any kind of state championships or budget hearings, anything that PCN covers, I could potentially get asked to go and be one of the people that films that. So that's been cool, but I also got in the studio with that. So their studio shows, like their live call-in shows and stuff, I've been running the cameras, running the audio board. I've been doing stuff like that. So just kind of picking up freelance for that. And then I also have my own freelancing thing, Myers Media. I just recently bought stickers and like new business cards and stuff for.
That's always fun.
Yeah, because I got asked to do this music conference called the Millennium Music Conference. So I'm making a highlight video for that, and that's kind of coming slowly, but I got a table in exchange for doing that. So I got to kind of plug my stuff, give away cards and whatnot. And with Myers Media, it's mostly I work with a brewery that's in my hometown, and they have live music like every Thursday and some weekends. So like yesterday I was down there for that, and I just take pictures of the bands that are playing. I give them to the person who's doing the promotions for that. He makes a post. Then after he posts his stuff, I make a couple posts of the bands, and it's been cool, like, because I get to network with a ton of bands, because I want to get into filming music videos. I think that would be really interesting.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the direction I'm going to now that I've kind of fallen into the live music scene.
Gotcha.
A lot harder since leaving college.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you got a hand kind of every which way, and that is good to, from an experience standpoint, to kind of be a little bit good at everything, be able to fit in wherever there's an opportunity. Yeah. Do you have like any one role that you feel like has been really fulfilling? Like, oh man, that's what I really like to do more than anything else.
I really enjoyed the editing aspects of things. Like, it's kind of one of those things where I love being able to like either salvage the footage or kind of create that package, because when I'm at these events, filming stuff, I don't really know the direction of it. I can kind of be like, ooh, I like this one shot I did, I like this pan, I like this,
right,
capturing this moment, and I'm like, I know which things I want to incorporate. But then being able to put it into a meld, I think that's really fun. I also have been kind of dabbling more in keyframe animation, and I wish I had more time to like just do like, fun little sketch videos kind of tying back to college. And I'm like, that's stuff I'm missing. But yeah, I just wish I had more time to like sit in front of my desktop and do the editing, just because with being spread so thin between like three things I know I have going on, and then anything that's a surprise, I definitely don't have as much free time as I wish I did. It feels like a full-time job would be less, time consuming right now.
Yeah, no, it is definitely a struggle, I feel like, but it is, like, especially freelancing as a whole is always kind of a logistical nightmare, wondering, like where the next paycheck is going to come from, and is it going to sustain me to the next thing. But I think that having the full-time position does kind of also have its drawbacks. Like, I mean, just from my perspective, sometimes it is a little hard to sit down in an editing bay by myself at 9 o'clock in the morning and work till like 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and then go home and try and find the energy to work on a passion project like this or a short film or something like that. So I think that like the burnout is kind of inherent no matter what you're going through, but it is, I think it's always, it kind of makes that payoff even more worth it when you're like, oh man, I got this done in spite of everything else that was going on,
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, and that's kind of why I've tried to make part of my freelancing a passion project thing. Like, and it's tried to be more oriented towards my interests. So I'm like, oh, if I'm like obligated by this like band or by this company to be doing this thing that I know I enjoy, and I'm forced to do it, at least in my brain, I'm hoping it becomes rationalized as, okay, I'm like doing something, I want, this can be my passion project, but also like something I need to like eat.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, like it leads to other things as well. Like there's a project that I don't want to name names, but there was a project I was working on for a client just to kind of make ends meet. And my heart just was not in it at all. I could care less. It was just to pay the bills and nothing else. And then I had been working on it for a while, and then this other opportunity came along, and I was really interested in it. And I was like, oh, but I mean, what are the chances that they'll hire me for that? And through emailing the people for the gig that I actually really wanted, they were like, oh yeah, we looked at your Vimeo and saw that you're involved with this one project. We and it was the one that I hated, but they were like, oh, we really like that. That's something that we enjoy. And I was like, oh well, you never know. I wish I could name names, but I'd rather keep it kind of vague, just to not offend anybody. But I'll tell you when we're not recording. But
I understand.
It's freelancing. It's just it is a logistical nightmare, but it does have moments like that where it pays off. Do you have any like so we talked about stuff that you like really enjoy doing from that world? Is there any has there been an experience that just turned out to be like a complete and total like shit show that you were like, oh man, there's no way this is going to go well, and then you somehow managed to salvage it at the last minute?
Oh, one that I had to salvage. I have
just one
that,
or maybe even just one that didn't go as bad as you thought it was going to
go. So yeah, while scouring the interwebs for freelance like editing gigs, I found a sports editing one where it was like this guy who was like a football coach, and he would record talks, and then you had to like match it to the play and like make this this whole like thing so that he could break down by chapter, and then he would sell it. Right. And I don't know much about football at all. So one, I have no idea what I'm doing, and when I would kind of like reach out to him and be like, hey, I don't really know what I'm doing, I don't think I'm qualified for this, he's like, oh no, like you just need more. And he would like email me like a Dropbox of like 3 more things, and I'm like, no, I haven't sent you one back yet, like this isn't working. And at one point he just messaged me back, and he was like, I found someone. He was like, stop working, I found someone else, you missed out on like $1,500 or like whatever. And I was like, dude, like I didn't know what I was doing, and you weren't helping me.
Yeah.
But it's been interesting, because like I always feel like when I leave an event, I always worry that I don't have enough footage, or my footage isn't good enough, because like I don't have a steady camera rig or anything, so I'm just going handheld for a lot of it.
Yeah.
And I'm always overshooting. I'm always getting more
better to
pictures
have too much than too little.
Yeah, exactly. And then you have like 20 gigs of video, and I'm like, oh, it becomes a problem of now I'm meshing it down.
Mm-hmm.
Like I realized that like I thought I wasn't doing a lot this past year, but I recently applied for a full-time job somewhere, and they were like, oh, can we see like an updated demo reel? And I was like, 2018's not updated. So I hastily threw together a compilation of stuff I did in the past year, and it kind of felt good to be like, I can't actually include everything I did, but it was literally just, I was going off instinct. I was like, this feels right. Like I picked the song, and I was like, this feels right, and I was just click, just like cut, and just kind of threw something together in a couple hours, and I'm like, like why,
Yeah, no, I've been there, done that. Yeah,
it's one of those things where I'm like, I need to keep up on other projects. Like I have a hard time multitasking, so it gets a little jumbled. But yeah, so I think next time around I'll be a little more prepared for when I need to update that. At least I had like a folder of like finished work.
Exactly.
So I could just pull from that instead of like, okay, which file is this in? Like, so, but
that's the one thing I'm always paranoid about is that it is always making sure that like anything I work on, I always have like a final, like a final video file version of it. I know some people like to save like all the raw footage, but I don't really bother with that. Mm-hmm. But it is like, it's like you said, we keep every time, well, not every time, but I keep on touching on this point whenever I have someone who has a freelance experience on the show. But it is kind of just a game where nothing is ever going to go 100% right, no matter how many times you do it. So it's just a matter of taking the areas where you did fuck up and using that as your learning experience into the next gig.
Yeah, actually, recently I had a kind of embarrassing mistake.
Oh boy!
So I was doing mic checks for we were going to do this for the radio station. We were doing this kind of late night style video, you know, like the guy like on the street with the microphone and he's running around like asking, you know, semi-obvious questions and trying to get an answer. Yeah. And then you would give like a prize if people, you know, gave the answer. So we were going to do that. So we were in the studio and, you know, it's all my equipment that I use for that stuff. So like I'm literally reinvesting everything I make. It feels like. So I have, you know, just a little Sennheiser microphone that has a, it's one that you can use a AA battery for the phantom power. It's built in. So I was using that because I don't have a Tascam at the moment. So I have that, and then I have an adapter to hook it right up to my camera. So I never have like audio backups, which is kind of scary. But it's something. And then we, the XLR cable we had so like we had like an XLR cable to run it through the mic to my adapter for my camera. Yeah. So, and we were going to just use that microphone to talk to people on the street. And after sound checks, I normally take the battery out because I don't want to leave it in, you know, because that'll just kind of kill the life of it. Right. And I guess I didn't put it back in my little sound bag. Oh, no. I left it sitting on the table. And so we're setting up, and I'm just like, so we end up just using the built-in camera audio, which I hate so much. Yeah. You know, like I edit with headphones. I just hear that hiss, and I'm like, this is disgusting.
Yeah, no, I've definitely been there, done that. That's such a pain.
What's interesting is none of it kind of put in perspective the fact that normal, you know, quote unquote normal people don't notice things like that, because I'm when we're filming it, Zach's holding the microphone up to people, but I'm holding the XLR cable like on me and it's not connected to the mic. So
that's too good. I love that. No, I've almost had that exact same experience. So I kind of, one thing that I got into with freelancing was I was like, oh man, like everyone gets married, or not everyone gets married, but the weddings are a very lucrative way to get your money back as a videographer, investing in new equipment and all that. But it's also I find probably one of the most stressful things to freelance for, because I mean, like, if you mess up, then you've just ruined this couple's day forever, you know what I mean? And you have a video record of it. And so it was one of the first weddings I was doing for a couple that wasn't like a friend or like a family member. So I was already super stressed, but everything was kind of going smooth. I invested in some new equipment that I thought would help. And one thing I did was I got, before the actual wedding, I got both of the couples to kind of go off into like their own like preparation suites. And I told them to just talk right into the camera and like leave a nice little message for each other. I had 2 Tascam DR10Ls that I was going to use for the ceremony, so that way they were each individually mic'd, and that way if one of them failed, then the other one could just be a backup since they were close enough to each other. And I checked them before and they sounded fine, but I guess somehow or another the groom's mic came slightly unplugged from the Tascam, but not all the way, so the signal would go in and out depending on how he moved. Ooh. So but I didn't notice that until I was editing. So I got to the very end, and I'm cutting together the well wishes, and the bride's like, oh my god, I love you so much, I'm so happy I found you, this is the best day of my life. And you cut to him and it's just pure static with occasional like lines cut in here and there. So I had to use the onboard mic on the camera. And I mean, like you said, that hiss is annoying enough, but he had this giant AC unit that was off in the corner of the room, and it was really, really loud. So I tried to use a denoising effect as best I could, but that just made him sound like he was underwater. And I was like, well, I can't have this AC unit in, but he sounds like he's talking like in like a fish tank to his bride. So I was like banging my head against the wall, and I was like, I'm just gonna have to send a rough cut and see what they think. And I sent it to them, and they were like, oh no, yeah, we think that part's fine. You can, that's okay. And I warned them. I was like, oh, the audio is gonna suck. It's gonna be terrible. I'm so sorry. This doesn't reflect on me. This is just an accident. I'm so sorry. If you want a refund, I'll gladly give you a refund. And they're like, oh no, that's fine. We don't care about that. So I mean, it just goes to show, like, some people just don't even notice, or they don't even care, and it's just such a weird thing, because it's such a huge issue for us, but it's just like no one even thinks about it.
Right, and it's probably because we're like, trained to, think about those things and,
right.
make sure those things don't happen, and we're definitely overly critical about our own work, because like, even after I will post something, like I'll see something like I've had to use like warp stabilizer and stuff, but I've learned since that warp stabilizer like does a little crop, so like I have to like do the whole clip of it, because one of my highlight melds, I start it in the middle of a clip, because there's just one part where it kind of like the camera's just a little too shaky for my liking.
Yeah.
And so there's a weird like cut in a little bit, just a mild zoom that's just doesn't look natural, and it just feels like a jump cut to me, and just like it sends off signals to my brain, and I'm like, this is not okay.
Terrible. It's so glaringly obvious. It's so obvious.
Right.
But no one ever cares.
No one said a single thing.
That's always makes you, but like, even as like frustrating that is to be like, how is that not bothering to you? Like, there is an angle of it where it's like, I'm an editing genius. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I tricked these people. They didn't notice.
Right. And I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's about. Like, usually the people that are asking for videos aren't video people.
Yeah.
So they're not spending all their time like overanalyzing the craft.
Right.
So it's not. I sometimes have to remember that. Although one interesting thing with the person who used to have my boss's job at the radio station, he did a lot of like video stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, it's gonna be like good. Like he's like, he's older than us. He's been doing it for like longer. He had like sponsored video series. I'm thinking like, I'm gonna learn something watching these.
Yeah.
And it was like, they were like jump cuts galore.
No.
It was long-winded, like just random speed up sessions with no like music. I was like, what is going on, kind of thing. And I'm just like, okay, the bar was a lot lower than I anticipated, but I guess it's always good to hold yourself to such a high standard, because then when things do go wrong, the only person who's usually like freaking out is yourself. And
right,
the as long as the product is good, at least to the people, and that's the people's stances on it, and that's why you give people rough cuts, and you're like, hey, here's a draft. Because one of the first videos I did for the radio station, I sent my boss like a rough cut. I literally just cut something together in like an hour and a half, and I just sent it to him, and I was like, hey, like what changes do you want, kind of thing. And he's like, I love it. I sent it to the client, and I was like, you did what? I was like, and the file had like rough cut draft 1 like in the title, and he's like, this is it, and he just sent it to them, and I'm like,
oh no,
what do you mean you sent it to them?
Did they at least like it when they saw it?
They did, but that's the only time I've ever done something for them, because I was just like, well, I did that client once, so
yeah,
because it's one of those ones where they had a good relationship with the radio station, because they have like every month they have an event there.
Yeah. So
the station's always there, and they have a good relationship. So I think it was just, I think it was more like a fun, like, hey, I'm the new guy kind of thing. So
yeah.
But that's what's interesting about stuff like that is I wasn't hired to like do video work. I was just hired to be like an event, like, you know, just stand at the table and give stuff away, talk to people. But because I like from the get-go, I was like, oh, I'll bring my camera, I'll do this, because like in my head I'm like, this is what they actually want me for, and I'll just do all this extra work for free. And then it turned out to be, they were like, hey, we can use you for, you know, photoshopping things and making like fun little videos around the office and at these events. And I got like office hours out of it, and I have a desk now, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it just goes to show things always lead to better things if you're persistent and careful enough about who you work with.
Yeah.
So I guess I mean I'm sure we could go on and on and on about all the horrors and trials and tribulations of freelancing, but yeah,
it's a podcast in itself.
Exactly. I guess to just end that little segment, do you have any advice for people starting out there who don't necessarily have a handle of like what they want to do and might opt into freelancing just to make ends meet?
Yeah. I would say don't worry about getting like top of the line equipment. My DSLR is like a crop sensor. It's not like I want a full frame sensor. I think it would be great, but I haven't worried about that. My microphone, like I don't have a Tascam for it. My lights, I paid like $80 for. Don't be afraid to buy used equipment. Don't be afraid to buy stuff that people are saying, ugh, that's, you know, so many years old. Don't be afraid to go buy an older lens. You know, you can pick up old lenses and you can get like an adapter for whatever camera you have, and you can save a lot of money that way. I'd say be cost effective. You don't have I use the Adobe suite, but you don't have to. DaVinci has a free version. There's GIMP that's a, you know, kind of like a knockoff Photoshop. There's ways to not break the bank getting into it. And then as you kind of grow your portfolio and you start to get work, then you can justify getting nicer things. But I'd say don't break the bank getting into it. Don't be afraid to do something for free or cheap, especially if it's like a friend or something, because that's the stuff that I did that kind of helped get me more work.
Right.
And just you know, film too much, you know, have too much content to edit through, because you can make you'll be surprised how well you can like make something out of a bunch of footage you think is, you know, like, why did I film all this, versus not having enough and being like, well, I have to use this clip because I have to hit a certain time limit, or this was my only take of something.
Right.
Those are the big things.
Yeah,
I'd say.
I think you hit the nail right on the head. Those are very important lessons I wish that I was able to have in my head starting out. So, yeah, that's solid advice. So, moving on to some more film-centric discussions. Just two questions I always ask each episode. What's your favorite movie or movies?
I'm all over the place. Actually, what's interesting is I have my webcam set so that I have like these two posters. One's a painting and one's like a movie poster. I have like a Eraserhead here, and I have a painting of Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Okay.
Because director-wise, Edgar Wright is one of those like that's one that like kind of set the bells off in my head. Because I remember watching Shaun of the Dead when I was like 13, and that's still one of my like favorite movies to this day. I'm like, this is you know what it's like to make a movie. I love the meshing of like horror and comedy. Yeah. So that kind of combo. So you've got your, you know, your like Sam Raimi's of the world and your Edgar Wrights, right? You know, David Lynch. These directors, and a lot of what they've done, I think, you know, kind of like shape the way I kind of like, I'm like, this is the stuff that I would be my go-to. I definitely like weird movies. Definitely, I like kind of ones that I can kind of shut my brain off for. Like one of my more guilty pleasure ones is like Tenacious D and the Pick of Destiny.
Okay, that's a good one.
Just because it's like anytime music gets involved and just it's so stupid, their comedy and stuff, where I'm just like, all right, bring it on. This is, I can just kind of shut my brain off for. But yeah, there's pretty much anything I can like kind of like turn off the overanalyzing for is good, and then if I turn it back on, I'm like even better.
Exactly. Yeah.
But stuff like that, I'd say. I've been getting a kick out of. I haven't really been watching like new. I have not had time to like keep up with things. I definitely think I have gravitated more to shows and whatnot. I don't know if it counts as a movie, but
no, by all means.
Black Mirror's Bandersnatch.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that counts as a movie. I think that show in itself counts as just a bunch of shorter movies. That's, I think, one of the best shows out there today.
Yeah, I've watched that whole series multiple times over. That is, like, I want to do like an analysis thing where I like do like each episode and just like go hardcore, but then I like see on YouTube people have already done it and I'm like, Well,
I mean, there is always kind of that new perspective that people can bring to it. There's definitely there's always things that that other people may not have picked up on. So is Bandersnatch like your favorite overall episode of that? Well, I mean, it's not technically an episode, but is that your favorite Black Mirror story, or do you have like a collection of like, these are my favorite episodes?
I think it's the most ambitious. I think it's, I think it's definitely like, because I just picture the script and the like story tree that had to be written out to make that happen, and it blows my mind. I think it's season 3 has the strongest series of episodes in my mind, because you've got that playtest one with the virtual reality, the the horror story,
right?
You've got the I'm gonna jump right to the one that I like. Just twist wise, it's my favorite, and that's that Shut Up and Dance one.
Oh yeah,
the kid,
that one's amazing.
What I love about that show is the way they can like, you can kind of figure out the twist. And it's like, it's obvious if you like know to look for it. But that was the one where I was like, it just went all over my head, and I had no idea that that's where it was gonna go. Yeah, and it's just, I love stuff like that where it's like you can see all the breadcrumbs and it can still fly under the radar.
Right.
And then like, so every time I've rewatched it since, I'm just like, you pick up on those little things.
Yeah. I think another episode I think that did that really well is, I don't know if it was in season 3, but I don't remember all of them by name, but the one where it's the woman who wakes up in the like townhouse or whatever, and there's the people like all recording her with their phones, and they're running around, and it's like meant to be like this post-apocalyptic world where like everyone, like something happened where everyone like is like glued to their phones except for a few people, but then like it gets revealed that that's not what's going on. Like, I love that episode a lot.
Yeah. I think that's called White Bear.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah, because they reference that, in other kind of episodes, because now they've got the like, shared all the episodes universe. Are in the same shared universe. Yeah. But that's a good one. I think that's season 2, but yeah, really strong stuff. I think they kind of overextended with the Bandersnatch thing, and I think the episodes that they released after that weren't as strong. In my opinion.
I remember hearing something somewhere where Bandersnatch was meant to be like an episode, but then they just got so ambitious with it that they figured, okay, let's take away some of the production and pre-production time from the next season, and we'll just channel it into this and make it like a movie. And I think it definitely shows, because I mean, for one, just the simple fact that there's less episodes, but I think content-wise, it just didn't measure up to previous seasons. Although I did really like the I think the strongest out of the 3 is the Striking Vipers one, like the VR like Mortal Kombat game.
Yeah.
I really liked that episode. As weird as it is, but
yeah,
I liked that one.
Yeah, I didn't know how to feel about that for a while. I was like, what? But it also makes perfect sense. Like if people had the capability to do that in like a game,
right?
I totally see that being the natural progression of the future.
Exactly.
So, and those are the best ones where it's like, you know, it's kind of like taking those ideas or like a certain technology and taking it to the absolute extreme.
Right.
Because they've played around with, you know, the VR stuff with like playtest and the USS Callaway, stuff like that. And then this was just like, yeah, this is probably what people would actually do with it. Like,
yeah. That is one thing I'm glad about, is that it's just kind of a tangent off what you said, but I actually made the mistake of starting with the USS is it Callister or Callaway?
Oh, it might be Callister.
I think it's Callister. I started with that one, like the weird Star Trek parody episode, just because for whatever reason that's where Netflix like dropped me in, because I heard the show was good, and I was like, okay, let's see what this is about. And then I was like, oh man, well now we got to go back and watch season 1. And season 1 starts with, I think, arguably like the most ridiculous story they've ever done.
Yep.
And I was like, oh man, I'm really glad I started with season 4. I don't know if I'd been able to keep watching if this is where I started. But yeah, Black Mirror is such a great show.
When I was first recommended it, I like watched the first episode and then I was like, what am I watching? And then I saw the second one, and that was so good, and I was like, it became one of my favorite episodes. And I was like, okay, now I understand the show. But like I was really skeptical to watch like the second episodes, just because I'm like, what is this? Why are people like raving about this so much?
Exactly, yeah. But I mean, I totally understand the hype. It's I don't know, if anyone out there who's listening to this hasn't seen Black Mirror yet, you should definitely go watch it. But don't start with season 1. I'd recommend starting with season 4 and then working your way backwards, and then maybe or no, is it season 4, the one with Callister?
I think yeah, Callister starts with that's the start of season 4.
So yeah, whichever season has
does that mean there's 5 seasons
whichever
now?
season has USS Callister. Yeah, because I think the 5th one was the weakest one, but I think that they had said that that what they were planning on doing, because for a while it was 3 episodes per season, and then they upped it to like 6, I think, for season 3 and 4. But then they mentioned something about after Bandersnatch and after season 5 came out that they might move back to the 3-episode format, just because it's quicker to produce, and people are apparently so hungry for more Black Mirror that they might opt for that strategy. But either way, I'm excited for a new season. It's I think the most innovative show on television at the moment, or Netflix, wherever you can watch it. But yeah. So I guess moving on, the last kind of general question, we touched kind of on it sort of a little bit earlier, but I think that anybody who wants to be involved in like media or filmmaking or video production, any sort of art form, really, they're kind of like inherently drawn to it. But one thing that I've noticed, because I watch a lot of interviews with like directors and cinematographers and editors and all that, and they oftentimes will cite one specific moment or like one movie that they saw that made them think, no, that's what I want to do. That's for sure what I want to do in my life. I keep on saying in each episode, for me, that was when I saw Kevin Smith's Red State back in high school. So do you have a moment like that made you realize, no, yeah, this is, I want to get involved in filmmaking. I want to work with cameras and video production and all that?
Definitely, you know, the earliest memory is watching Shaun of the Dead. My dad had like rented it from Blockbuster, and so for that whole time period that we had it, of that rental period, I must have just had it on repeat, watching it, kind of thing. That's a big movie for me, and that was probably when I started, you know, kind of asking for like a, you know, like a camera, and I got like a little like flip camera that had like the USB there, and then I like got like a camcorder, and then I was like making, cause I want to say, and this is like cringeworthy times, and I don't think I have a copy of any of this anymore. So
okay, so no shame in it now.
Yeah, exactly. But before before I had the little flip thing, and so this is probably around the time that I got Shaun of the Dead, and it became a big thing. Mm-hmm. But I have a bunch of stuffed animals because I love playing like claw machines.
Right.
I always have, kind of thing. And I had this little camera that was, probably not even like palm size. It's tiny, not good pictures whatsoever. But I would set up my stuffed animals in like different like positions and stuff, take a picture, and then I would kind of like narrate the story that was happening. So it was almost like a really bad like stop motion kind of thing.
Yeah.
So just like jump from the action. And then I had a little keychain cow that would like moo and stuff when you pressed it. I might still have it, and I'll look for it later. But I'd press it, and I think I like called it like Moo Moo Productions or something. And so I had this series, and I think I did like 10 of them as a kid. And I couldn't have been more than like 12 or 13. But it was probably around that time that I started doing that, because I would get like, for whatever reason, there would be like specific movies that I would just get like attached to, and I would watch over and over and over again. And that's one of the earliest ones I had, and probably when I was like, I want to do fun stuff too. 'Cause I was in like full cringe mode on YouTube at that moment in time, because I think
everybody who is like doing videos nowadays was doing full cringe mode YouTube.
Yeah,
back in the day.
Yeah, I had like an anime channel where I was doing those like AMVs.
Right.
So I had like a cracked Sony Vegas, and I was just like editing these to like my like favorite music of like 2007 or whatever. But that was, I'd say probably the Shaun of the Dead is when I was like, I want to do fun stuff like that too. And then a combination of that, and honestly just being raised in the kind of time when YouTube was starting to be what YouTube is, but it was in such a larval form to what it is now.
Right.
I think yeah, that's probably what inspired me to do all that weird stuff. And now I want to watch it for the novel value, but
exactly, yeah.
But it must never see the light of day.
Right. I mean, and it's weird too, because I mean, like, I think that we kind of feel like, I touched on this in another episode, but I think that we kind of feel like that about like our YouTube things, and that kind of feels acceptable to us. But when you scale it up, I mean, like, Steven Spielberg must hate watching Jaws. Like, he must cringe so hard whenever whenever someone's like, "Oh man, Jaws is my favorite movie," he's like, "Ah, my God, don't talk about what my young man's projects like." But it's I think that is kind of like an inherent thing that we all kind of come to hate our work eventually. But there is some charm in it still.
I was just gonna say, I think there's a weird curve where really old stuff is like that adorable cringe, where it's, I hate it for, obviously I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I have things where I like played around with, like, I tried to get better at the stop motion. I tried to like, have more storytelling things, and you could see that progression. And there's that amateur, like, oh, it's just a kid, it's kind of, fun. And then it's like, as I got more serious and started taking classes, I feel like I hate that work for like a completely different reason, because now I'm like, I should have known better not to try and do that, or not to be like overly ambitious or, whatnot.
Right.
Because it's like, I'm like working with no budget, no pre-planning, that I still need to teach myself to be better at pre-production.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think now I'm like more critical, because now I know what I should have been doing.
Right.
So I think there was definitely a line where it's like, you know, like 3 or 4 years ago, I started being like, okay, going forward, this work is judged more critically than work that before I knew what I was doing. So I hate them in different ways. But it's still hard to like not watch something that you did and be like, okay, that's still cool that I did that. So
yeah. There is still some sense of pride in all of it. But so going on to our film discussion, we mentioned some weird, strange but funny experiences with movies. So Bubba Ho-Tep.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, actually, really quick, sorry, I always forget to do this. So for anyone who's tuning in the first time, the gist of the podcast is that I used to have a YouTube show where I would recommend movies monthly and say, here's what I think is really good, you should check it out. I would show footage, and obviously that gets flagged by copyright all the time. And, I mean, we touched on it a little bit in hating our own projects, but one thing that I always hated was listening to the sound of my own voice as I was, like, jiltedly reading off a really, really poorly written script. So, but I still wanted to do film discussions. That's why we have the podcast. So every episode, I recommend the guest a movie, the guest recommends me a movie, and we discuss. So the movie that Cody recommended me was Bubba Ho-Tep. So I guess summarize what this movie is.
So it starts out in a nursing home kind of thing where we have a old Elvis Presley that is played by Bruce Campbell, and he didn't actually die. He actually switched roles with an Elvis impersonator, and so he went on to live a very boring life as an Elvis impersonator. He wound up in this nursing home, and then you've got John F. Kennedy, who they took his brain and they put it into the body of an elder African-American man and hid him in this nursing home. So the two of them are just kind of living life as old people, and then a mummy that's also Southern because they're in Texas starts eating the old people, starts eating their souls through their rectal region because that's the orifice souls must get sucked out of. And so they band together and become heroes once again to stop the Bubba Ho-Tep.
Oh my goodness. It's funny because, like, I mean obviously if anyone's listening is like hearing this summary and hearing us laugh at it, I was watching this movie last night in preparation for the show, and my fiance was kind of like off. I was like at my computer desk with like headphones on, and I was laughing a lot, and she's like, what, is this movie really that funny? What's this movie even about? And I was like, okay, so bear with me. And I basically like I explained it exactly how you did, and I got, so there's an Elvis impersonator, but it's actually Elvis, and she kind of like cocked her head to the side a little bit, and I was like, oh no, you're not ready, that's not the weird part. But it's a truly unique experience, and I very much enjoyed it. But yeah, so I mean, it's a very fun campy movie, kind of like in the vein you said with like Shaun of the Dead, where it's like it's funny, but it also has its hand in horror a little bit. And I was picking up a lot. I mean, obviously Bruce Campbell's in it, but I was kind of picking up a lot of Evil Dead 2, Army of Darkness kind of vibes from the way it was shot and like the way they put it together and what little action there is. It's just a fun campy experience.
I love it for that aspect where it's like those kind of low budget, but it's still like, you know, really like engaging, and like they can kind of add comedy to it because of how bad, you know, the fight sequences are, because these, you know, they're old people.
Exactly.
And just like Elvis with a little fork or like his walker, like just trying to like fight off a mummy. I love stuff like that. And yeah, it does have a lot of those vibes, those, you know, those low budget horror vibes where just kind of, I love it because it's clearly not a movie that's trying to take itself too seriously.
Yeah.
And that's something that with like horror movies, sometimes I'm like, this is a silly premise. This is you should not be taking this seriously.
Yeah.
But they say it, all of it, like just like in the scene when they're in the bathroom, and he's like, it's Egyptian. Like he just just casually knows what Egyptian like looks like. And
I have the Book of the Lost Souls under my bed.
It's just so ridiculous.
Yeah, but in the best possible way. Like it's just like it is really it kind of relishes in the fact that it is a B movie, but it has some really kind of surprisingly tender moments. Like, I mean, some might argue out of place, but like really tender moments with like old Elvis kind of like in his bed being like, oh man, did I really make the right decision? I wonder, I wish I could talk to my daughter. And like, I mean, Bruce Campbell does turn out like a really heartfelt, entertaining performance. And I think that is one thing that this has going for it over other sort of B movie things he's done, like Man with the Screaming Brain, or I mean, just like any of his other kind of lesser known roles.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it kind of like, I feel bad for Bruce Campbell kind of thing. Like, I mean, like, I think he does a really good job with, like you said, the tender stuff, and it's like he's bookending. It really is like kind of like carrying the story from beat to beat, because he does have a lot of those reflection moments in the bed, like thinking about like Priscilla, his daughter, and then anybody, you know, else, and just kind of reflecting on the choices he made, and like, you know, because it's like he kind of goes from like, you know, he wants those people back, he wants that like fame back, to being like, I am the hero, I feel the way I want to be, like, you know, he's kind of like redeeming himself. And granted, the ways that it's kind of, you know, revealed physically that he is back to form, is a little silly, but that's just kind of the nature of that. But I always wanted Bruce Campbell to have more like bigger. I wanted him to have that big break kind of thing. Yeah, it felt like he never was able to get out of this like B movie thing. Like anything Sam Raimi did, he would like either cameo in or like have a small role. But like Sam Raimi kept trying to get Bruce Campbell like a bigger role. I don't know if you know this, but Sam Raimi did like a comic book movie before Spider-Man. He did a DC movie, and I'm gonna Google this real quick just so I can.
The one thing I don't remember where I heard it, but there was a petition at one point for Bruce Campbell to be the new Batman, just purely because of his jawline and the cowl.
That would be great. Okay, so the movie was called Darkman, and it was about
okay.
When I was thinking of movies to recommend, I thought about this one, because it was a, you know, scientist loses his face, you know, can't go back to his family, but he figures out a way to like shapeshift his face with his science stuff to like impersonate people and get revenge. And Sam Raimi really, really wanted Bruce Campbell to have that role, and Warner Brothers was like, no, we don't think he's, you know, we don't think he has the pull for this, we don't think he can do it, you know, the typical stuff. And they're like, we want somebody we can trust for, you know, to get the ratings for this revenge comic book flick. And you know who they got for this revenge thing instead?
Who'd they get?
Liam Neeson. So before Liam Neeson got that like pigeonholed for revenge movies, he was doing this like revenge comic book thing, and I think that's hilarious. But
that's too funny. So
as like a little jab to the executives and whatnot, at the very end of the movie, Darkman, Liam Neeson is like he like escapes from like the big, you know, scene at the end. Yeah. And he kind of turns to the camera to reveal what face he used to like, you know, blend in with the world. And it's Bruce Campbell. Just getting a little cameo at the end, almost as a big like, you know, middle finger to the execs for being like, I could have done this, you know. So the last scene you get. But yeah, stuff like that. Good. I'm like, Bruce Campbell, so good.
Yeah.
But
He's hilarious too. Like, I mean, he kind of gets like, I mean, like a lot of his stuff is kind of like comedy centric, but he's also like, I mean, like we touched on like his like more like serious kind of tender side of this movie, but I think he really excels in any form of comedy. I mean, just listening to him, like whenever he does a Q&A, he's so like quick on his feet. Like he's amazing.
Yeah. What's interesting was my first like role that I saw Bruce Campbell in wasn't even like one of his B movie, kind of roles. It was him as like one of the supporting characters in a TV show, which is Burn Notice.
Yeah.
Growing up, for whatever reason, I was like really into watching like hour-long like USA dramas. So, like, my first memory is of Bruce Campbell. Now I'm like, then I grew up a little bit and got into, like, all the B-movie stuff he did. And I was like, oh, this is way cooler. I'm like, this makes sense. But, yeah, I think he does a wonderful, wonderful job in Bubba Ho-Tep. Mm-hmm. His Elvis impression's pretty good. Yeah. And, yeah. The flashbacks where he's both Elvis and the impersonator, so it's like, okay, he definitely,
right.
I thought that was a nice touch. I thought it, because I wasn't sure if they would like do like a different person,
yeah.
Kind of thing.
At
like,
first,
kind
I
of
thought
throw
it
people
was
off.
Yeah,
but then it's just Bruce Campbell again. Yeah, I love the when the mummy talks. One, why does he have that hat? That doesn't make sense.
I just like the whole, like, because it is kind of like a weird kind of Western, like with like the soundtrack is very like this is our last the final showdown, like as the sun sets, kind of like cowboy-esque score, and you have the one senile old guy with like the pop guns and the the mask and all that.
Bang bang.
It is kind of like this weird like has this weird Western element to it that like you kind of elevate, like takes it from this like kind of horror movie to almost like this like big, like as big as you can get with like two old people taking on a mummy, but like it's kind of like it elevates it to like this weird action horror Western comedy hybrid. It's just a little bit of everything, and it somehow works.
Yeah, no, for sure. I just love that, and the fact that the only, like, I love the fact that Elvis doesn't believe at first that the old guy is Kennedy.
Yeah.
Even though, like, it's like you're in just as ridiculous of a situation, and he's like almost like, he's crazy. But then it's kind of like, it's cool that they finally like,
come to terms where he's like, hey, how was Marilyn? Like, yeah, that moment. Yeah.
Woo. Yeah.
Oh man, it's just I guess we can get into spoilers a little bit. I mean, like, there's the plot is kind of simple, but I mean, if we want to talk like specific stuff, I guess now is the time to get into it. So if you haven't seen Bubba Ho-Tep yet, go check it out. I was able to see it for free on Amazon Prime. I'm pretty sure you can rent it on most other platforms like YouTube Movies and Google Play and all that. But yeah, definitely check it out any way you can. So yeah, I was like, I kind of said like I was expecting it a little bit with like the fact that it is kind of played up as like a weird like one last ride kind of Western story. But I wasn't like really expecting like him to die at the end, but it is kind of like poetic in a good way. You know what I mean?
Right. Because it's like, where would you go from there, kind of thing. Both of them, like, it's
right.
No one believes them. They're not happy in their situation, especially Elvis.
Yeah.
He's very much kind of yearning for that, and to go out as the hero. I think that definitely is more fitting than him like recovering or trying to like because there's nowhere to go from that. Like, how do you top fighting ancient Egyptian cursed mummy?
Right.
That's also Southern.
It's also Southern for some reason. It's just like the sheer originality to like write that down, and like for someone to fund that too. Like,
right.
There's just some movies that kind of amaze me that they get made at all. Like, it's just, but I'm really glad that this one got made, because it is really, it is a fun experience. If you're in the mood for it, it's a very excuse me, it is a very a fun experience. Do you have like a favorite moment overall in that whole movie? Because I think mine is definitely or like the one thing that I like to come back to, and I'll have a funny story about this, but I'll wait till the end to share it. But I like the little intermittent moments with like the hearse drivers as they're taking the bodies out. I don't know what it is, but I really enjoyed those moments.
Yeah, those are good. And like, he's like, you ever wonder? And then it's like, no, I just wanted to ask about the deodorant. You know, that was good. I think the moment that made me laugh the hardest was with the when the mummy kind of like is talking to Elvis and Kennedy, and he like speaks it in like Egyptian or whatever, and the hieroglyphics come out, and then like you just see these weird like pictures, and then the subtitles
comes
below
up underneath.
Yeah. The two times that happened was really good, and then at the end when the stars did the same thing, I thought it was both hilarious, and then like, how would Elvis know what that says? Like, he's just like staring up at this, and it's like, wait, Kennedy was the one that could read Egyptian. You know, was translating the Egyptian, so how would he know?
I mean, I think if we're gonna look at a movie where Kennedy and Elvis fight a mummy in an old folks' home, and you're questioning how would Elvis be able to translate the stars in the sky, I think your suspension of disbelief kind of has to be used up at that point. But it's it's just a fun experience. I wasn't expecting it to be as funny as it was. Like, I knew it was like a campy B horror movie, but like starting it off, it starts off like kind of really depressing for like the first 20 minutes or so, and then it picks up. Like it shifts genres so many times, but it is like a kind of a really, at least for the first 10 minutes, I found I was like, man, this is like, I hope this turns funny sometime soon, because this is just like end of life hospice stuff is kind of sad, but it pays off really well, I think, in a very satisfying way. Like I didn't want it to be over when the credits rolled.
Yeah, definitely. And what I love about that movie is for the most part it really is it takes place in like one location. Like, there are the flashbacks with Elvis and whatnot, but like for the most part it sustains itself as like a one kind of location. They're in that. Yeah. They're either in that hospice care, or they're like outside of it. Right. And I love movies that don't need to be overly ambitious and go a lot of places to tell a full story. Like, they were, it's like, as that like low budget kind of charm. Yeah. But like, I've always loved like, lower budget movies that can do that. Like Clerks is one of those movies where I'm like, it's just here. They're just the story itself is keeping you engaged, and it doesn't need to go out and do things. But yeah, it's just oddly charming, and just the more you think about it, the more you laugh because of how ridiculous it is. Right. And I was glad that the first character who got taken out by the Bubba Ho-Tep was this old lady who is being very mean. An asshole, yeah. Like who takes the glasses off of like a person in an iron lung and steals chocolate? And what are you doing? Like,
it is very. I touched on it earlier. It is very satisfying in all the right ways. The payoff is great. So yeah. Bubba Ho-Tep. If you want nothing else but a purely original experience you can't get anywhere else, then definitely check that movie out. But I'll end that portion on this. It was funny because one thing that I do with PBS, sometimes is I'll help out with recording their news segments, and I don't know if you're familiar with him, but there's a filmmaker that I grew up in like the Bethlehem, Catasauqua area of Pennsylvania named Dan Roebuck, who kind of he was like big into like theater and filmmaking and all that, and then went out to Hollywood and got like bit parts in a bunch of movies. Like I think most famously probably was The Fugitive. I think I haven't seen that movie, so I don't know what part it was, but that's kind of like the one that they always say. But he eventually, like in the past few years, he kind of like came back out this way. He was actually also in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, that video game that just came out. I don't remember who he played, but they point being that we interviewed him for the news, and I helped run camera for that. And he has been making these like independent films kind of based out of like the Bethlehem area as of late. He's going into production on a new one this coming spring, so we got to talk with him a little bit about that, and I did like the whole, here's my business card, I'm a freelancer and all that. And it was funny, I had that conversation. I was like, oh man, he's a nice guy, I should watch more movies that he's in. And then I sit down to watch Bubba Ho-Tep, and lo and behold, he's one of the hearse drivers. So I just thought that was so funny. He's the one with like the full, I mean they both had glasses, but the full head of hair, the kind of slightly heavy set one, who's like, no, I was saying go get the deodorant, that guy. So
nice.
I just thought that was a weird, funny connection where I was like, oh man, I wasn't expecting that to happen. And now I wish that I had the chance to ask him about this movie.
Right.
But
that's great how things like that happen. Well, maybe you can like be on the set of the next film he does.
Yeah. And even funnier too, like I think that there might be a slight typecasting element, because the first movie that he made when he came back he was a funeral director. So I don't know what it is. Maybe he just likes working within that that range of roles. But yeah. So Bubba Ho-Tep, see it any way you can. It's like I said, available on Amazon Prime.
For sure.
Can rent it. I don't know for how much, but it pretty relatively cheap, I think, on like YouTube movies and Google Play and all that. So yeah, I totally recommend it. See it any way you can. And then that leads us into the movie I recommended, Cody. Another very ridiculous, over-the-top comedy. One of my favorites. It is in my favorite movies of all time list. I'm not exactly sure where it ranks, but it is one of those movies where it's like, oh man, do you have any like good like comedic movies that like no one's really seen? I'm like, oh, you got to check out Black Dynamite. So, Black Dynamite is kind of. I'll summarize it really quick, and then we can get into what we thought of it. But it's a revenge story told from the style of blaxploitation movies of the 70s, starring a man literally first name Black, last name Dynamite, as he tries to avenge the death of his brother and rid the community of dope. So, what did you think of Black Dynamite?
It was ridiculous. You know, it was very fitting, the movies we picked, because they're both very over the top.
Yeah.
I loved that, you know, it's like it really played up the campiness and stuff to the next level, because like they had these like subtle fourth wall breaks kind of thing that I really love. Like this one time, Black Dynamite like stands up real quick and the boom's still in the shot. It's just bobbing up and down.
I love like, things like that.
There's like random cuts, like the one thug in the bar, like I think the friend like slaps him and then he's like, hey, you know, and then it like cuts and I think it's a different guy.
Yeah, like the stunt person or something like that.
Yeah. And then there was another one where they're in that one later sequence and the guy's like talking about like, oh, I'm gonna retire after this, I'm gonna see my wife and kids, you know, settle down, and then he gets hit with the spear, and then Black Dynamite goes to be like, who saw that coming? I mean, where'd that come from?
That whole movie is full of like, that's what I really love about it, is that it's like, I think parody movies nowadays, like, I mean, obviously I'm a fan of like the original like scary movies and all that, but I think that today especially, we don't really see it as much lately with like parodies. They're just not really as popular. I think mainly due to the whole movie craze, like epic movie, disaster movie, and all that, where I think people got locked into believing that parody had to be like this one way to do it, and that the only way to do it was to constantly reference other movies specifically. But what I really love about this movie is that it just takes this whole genre of the blaxploitation film, and I think that the filmmakers really kind of sat down and they said, well, okay, what were like what are some cliches that we can like really make fun of both overtly and subtly, like you said, like the fourth wall breaks, because like those movies were just not really well made or well put together. But the writing too is like, I love it so much. Like you hinted on it a little bit with like the I'm going to retire, I'm going to go do this and that, and then he gets killed immediately. But the one that I always, like any friends of mine who've seen it, whenever we're watching a movie and there's a scene where there's a little too much exposition, we'll just look at each other and go, Jimmy, I am 18-year-old Black Dynamite, and you are my 16-year-old kid brother. Like, it's so well written, and it makes fun of not even, and that's not even necessarily a trope with blaxploitation movies. It's like just a trope with movies in general. But it's just so, I love the way it makes fun of kind of everything so masterfully. And like, I mean, like you said, the more overt stuff, like the boom being in the shot, or like the really bad jump cuts, or the reusing the same stock footage of like the same car going over a cliff over and over again. It's just it's stupid, but it's so smart in how stupid it is. It's amazing.
Oh, like that one scene where it's after he rids the streets of Smack, and they go to the jump rope, and the kids are like, hey, my mommy says our daddy's name is Black Dynamite.
It's a common name, kids. Oh my god, I love it. Yeah. And even in the subtle things too, where it's like his backstory is like constantly changing too, where it's like early on he's like, you promised your mother that you wouldn't let you wouldn't let your younger brother get killed by drugs, and then like later in the movie, in that, I think that same scene that you're referencing, the one woman's like, the drugs are everywhere, Black Dynamite. They even got in the orphanage, and Black Dynamite's like, yeah, I was an orphan once. I was like, wait, but you had a mom and dad. It's just, oh my god, it's so great. If nothing else, that movie is one of the most quotable comedies I've ever watched. Like I'm here to tell you that if I catch any of you selling drugs to the community, there's going to be hell to pay. But Black Dynamite, I sell drugs to the community. Oh my god, it's so good.
It's so good.
Do you have like a favorite? Because I always reference as like my favorite overall scene is the kung fu fight on, like, from that point where he's like, I'm gonna retire and I'm gonna go home to my kids, up until when they fly away in the helicopter. That's my like favorite sequence. I laugh the hardest at that whole point in the movie. But do you have like a favorite a scene overall? I mean, I guess we can use that as our cue to get into spoilers. So yeah, if you haven't seen Black Dynamite, I don't think it's free on any streaming platforms. I own a DVD of it, but I think you can get it on Prime for relatively cheap. Google Play, Vudu, all that. So yeah, sorry.
Oh, I was gonna say you can watch it free on Crackle with ads, which is what I did.
Gotcha.
I will say I wish, I'm definitely gonna buy it. Not because the ads kind of like drag it out, because there were a lot of ads. That's the problem with doing that stuff. But like, yeah, if you want to kind of experience it, just that's a good way to get the taste of it. But oh god, I think just so much of it blends together of just like hilarious. Creamed corn, I think too, where he's just like he's like describing, like he's talking about it in the barber shop. Yeah. And then they have like that chase sequence and he's just like throwing things down. It's so silly. Yeah. And then how he the idea of the helicopter sequence where he's like, you take over kind of thing. And he's,
I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah. And then it doesn't matter.
He just gets blown.
The Secret Service agent has like a rocket launcher. And he's like, cream corn, no!
Oh my god, it's so ambitious too, in its ridiculousness. Yeah, it's like there's no starting that movie off. I wasn't expecting us to go literally all the way to the top with the whole scheme, but it's like everything I said about Bubba Ho-Tep, where it's like it pays off so nicely. Like every little thing in that movie just pays off so well in the best possible way. It's oh my god, I love it so much. And grossly overlooked. I feel like I wish more people knew about this movie. So hopefully this podcast brings some new viewership to it. But yeah,
totally. Both very good, over the top comedies. I found myself I was I want to watch it again kind of thing. Just there were, oh my god, it's so good because it really does it just takes it to the extreme. Yeah, in so many ways. And then the one white actor in it, the one who plays the doctor.
Yeah,
and he's just but Black Dynamite. It sounds like he's just
for the
reading
love
his lines
of God.
off.
You can clearly see the cue cards.
Yeah.
I had this great thing that one thing that I did was I had a bunch. I used to do movie nights back when we were in college, and I would do this thing where I would, if it was a movie like this that really is really kind of over the top in the best possible way, I would say, okay guys, we're gonna watch this thing called Black Dynamite, and I don't want you to look up anything about it. Just know that it's a comedy and it's very ridiculous, and and we're gonna treat this as a litmus test, where if you are able to watch this movie and you don't laugh a single time, then that is undeniable proof that you have no soul. And some of my friends were like, okay, I'm taking that as a personal challenge. They would sit down, and within minutes, people were kind of giggling a little bit, but when we get to that first scene with Black Dynamite, and they're like, "Oh man, Black Dynamite, that was the best sex I've ever had," and he goes, "Shh, honey, you're gonna wake up the rest of the bitches." Everybody was in stitches. It's just I keep on saying every single line of that movie is so quotable. Everything is so well written, so well delivered. The way it's edited, even though it's purposely done so poorly in so many scenes, it all complements all of its individual elements so well, and it's just a great experience. I love it.
Yeah, for sure. That's I need more movies like that.
Yeah.
So I definitely after watching that, I was I've found a new subgenre that I need to research some more.
I think that there was I don't remember if the anime, if this was based off of the anime. I know there's a Black Dynamite anime, but I don't know if the anime was based off the movie, or if the movie was based. I don't know which came first. So I know there is more Black Dynamite content out there. I've seen some of the anime, and it didn't look as funny as the movie, but I mean, that's out there too if people want to find it. So although I'm not sure how you would, maybe Crunchyroll or something like that, but yeah, just Black Dynamite is just a go-to comedy. I have yet to show it to a person who didn't think it was hilarious. So I hope that's and I mean I'm really glad to hear that you enjoyed it, because it is kind of I know that you of all people really appreciate a good comedy, but it is kind of risky because it is a little bit of an out there kind of, not nearly as out there as what you recommended me, but they both they make a great double feature, I must say, because I did watch them both back to back.
For sure, because it's I was really there was a moment when I was nearing the end of Black Dynamite where it just kind of clicked in my head, and I was like, maybe I should have considered Kung Fury.
That's another great one, but I think, isn't that free on YouTube, or do you have to pay to watch
Probably.
that? Okay.
Yeah, I know. I know they wanted to do like a full length one because obviously Kung Fury is just like a half an hour or whatever.
Right.
I think. But I think they wanted to do like a full length one, and I'm not sure if that ever dropped or not, but
I don't think so, because I remember being like really big into that when they first released it. So I mean, I hope they are making a full length one, because I mean, I do see what you mean. It has a very sort of similar vibe of like relishing in like the stereotypes of the time and like using that to its full it's like taking it to its full advantage.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And
so
a lot of Kung Fu.
Fury, yeah, a lot of Kung Fu, exactly. If you can see, I think Kung Fury. Actually, no, yeah, it's on Netflix, because I remember scrolling through Netflix and seeing it on there at some point. I don't know if it's still on there, but I do know for sure it was on there at some point. So check out Netflix if you haven't seen Kung Fury yet. It's definitely worth it. And yeah, I mean, check out Bubba Ho-Tep if you want some weird horror Western elements, and check out Black Dynamite.
Yeah,
if you just cannot get enough of blaxploitation films.
Yeah, and the director of Bubba Ho-Tep, I meant to bring this up earlier, but the Don
Coscarelli or something, yeah,
Coscarelli, yeah. He also directed the adaptation of one of my favorite books, John Dies at the End.
Oh yeah,
which is another.
Right, you
another
mentioned that.
over-the-top horror comedy, and it's very fitting that the guy who did Bubba Ho-Tep did that. So,
right.
And I know that one floats along those like free things too.
Yeah,
it's a very silly, out there.
I think it's on
low
Netflix.
Budget horror. Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
that's how I found it like years ago. And it's one of those movies where I'm like, it's never gonna not be on one of those streaming platforms.
Right. It is. That's also another really out. I've been meaning to give that another watch, because I did, like you said, I saw it on Netflix a few years ago, and I remember enjoying it, but I wasn't like 100% into like the weirdness of it, if that makes sense. Like, I think movies like Bubba Ho-Tep and John Dies at the End, to an extent, Black Dynamite, I think you kind of have to be in a certain mindset to watch. Like, they're just, sometimes they're just movies where you kind of have to, like you had mentioned earlier, shut off like the overly analytical part of your brain and just kind of let everything happen. And I don't think that I was necessarily in the correct mood to see John Dies at the End, but I do remember liking it, so I'll have to check that out again. So maybe that can be another recommendation if we have you on again sometime in the near future. We could dive into that.
Definitely. I definitely have plenty of movies I'd love to, do. Especially because I was very tempted to make this a so bad it's good kind of thing. Because it's like, you've got like your Rooms and your Thanksgivings and your Birdemics and what was have you ever seen? Sorry, I don't know if I'm breaking form.
No, it's fine.
Okay, but Maximum Overdrive.
Yeah.
I love that movie. It's just like Stephen King's only directing, like, the only time he actually directed one of his movies, and it's just.
Did he direct like that weird remake of The Shining as well, or did he just like?
I think he just funded it.
Okay, gotcha.
Kind of thing. Yeah, but what's weird is like with that, it's like the movie was good. Like, I don't know why he needed to fund that, but I know at least with movies, as movies go, I'm pretty sure that's the only one he directed.
Okay.
And it's just so ridiculous.
Yeah.
And like, why he picked like a short story, like when he has like these like 1,000-page novels, but he picks like this like 20-some page short story, and oh my god, it's so ridiculous. Like I think I remember listening to the How Did This Get Made podcast episode on it, and I'm just like, how did this get made?
There was a clip, I don't remember if it was on like a DVD or something for it, but there is footage of him like introing the movie or something, and he jokes about how like something always goes wrong with his adaptations, or the filmmakers get something wrong about it, and he was like, I just wanted to see a Stephen King story done right. Like, I mean, he's notorious for being like, oh yeah, no, I like all my adaptations and all that, but he was kind of poking fun at it a little bit, because I think he's one of those writers, especially where it's kind of hard to adapt him, because a lot of his books are like what's in people's heads, and that doesn't really translate that well to the screen. But I think that he did pick a good story to make like his directorial debut with, because it is so ridiculous that like only the person who thought up that ridiculousness could really handle it from taking it from page to screen, I think.
Totally. Just the turkey carver coming alive and trying to attack them.
This ATM called me an asshole.
Yeah.
Oh man, but yeah.
I'm
so
glad that was his cameo.
Yeah. I think that there should be. I'm sure that exists somewhere, but his cameos in his movies, I think, are always in a weird way the most special part. He always picks like very strange and interesting roles to cameo as. But yeah. So I guess that wraps up this episode of the Watchlist Podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Cody, thank you so much for coming on. I had a great time talking B-movies and weird comedies with you. I'd love to have you on again. We'll do a So Bad It's Good double feature, maybe. I'll revisit John Dies at the end.
That'll be great. Anytime you want me on, I'm more than happy to watch some movies and talk about them. That's the kind of stuff I love doing. So thank you for having me.
Of course, man. It's great to have you, like I said. So... And again, thank you guys for watching the Watchlist Podcast. Looking ahead at next episode, so if you follow me on Instagram, there was a little bit of a scheduling problem I mentioned. We were meant to, back as episode 5, we were going to have my friend Emily Povlich on, and we were going to watch the movie she recommended me was Disney Pixar's Brave, and I recommended her, I think it's Studio Canal's Secret of Kells. We ended up changing my recommendation to A Town Called Panic for some reasons we'll get into in that episode when that finally goes up. But she actually got sick right before we were going to record it, and as of now, I don't think she's officially better yet. Fingers crossed that it's not this big coronavirus issue that's sweeping the country lately. But yeah, so we're going to be recording that episode soon. So yeah, I just wanted to use that as like a way to kind of explain the whole discrepancy with the changing recommendations in between episodes and the shifting of schedule. So we should be back on track to follow the schedule I have written now. So all that is to say, next episode we should have Emily Povlich on to talk about those movies we recommended. And once again, she recommended me Disney Pixar's Brave. I'm sure that needs no introduction. Check that out. It has to be on Disney Plus. I'm not sure about other platforms because I think they've been pulling a lot of their content off lately. And then I recommended her. I don't know the production company, and it's French, so I can't pronounce the names of the people who directed it. But it's a stop-motion animated movie called A Town Called Panic. Check both those movies out. Like I said, Brave is on Disney+. A Town Called Panic, I'm 90% sure you can watch free if you have a Prime subscription. If not, both of them should be available in some places to rent, to stream. But yeah, once again, thank you guys for watching the Watchlist Podcast, and we'll see you next time.